Imagine this. You've checked off the boxes that were supposed to define success. You have a job, maybe a family. You've carried the weight of expectations: be strong, be reliable, provide. And yet, in the quiet hours when no one is watching, you feel something unsettling. Not strength, not clarity, but confusion. You ask yourself, what does it mean to be a man in this world that keeps changing faster than I can catch up? This question is not yours alone. It is the silent question of millions of men today. On the surface, we see progress societies more open, women advancing in education and careers, new definitions of equality shaping families and workplaces. But beneath the surface, many men are struggling with the crisis of identity. The roles that once defined masculinity: provider, protector, unquestioned authority, are dissolving. And in their place, uncertainty, pressure, and often silence. The data paints the picture clearly. In the United States, nearly half of young women now hold college degrees, compared to barely over a third of young men. The gap is growing wider with every generation. Boys consistently underperform in reading compared to girls, and in a knowledge-driven economy, that gap compounds over time. In the workplace, male participation has been declining for decades. Men who once defined themselves by being breadwinners now face automation, outsourcing, and industries in flux. The role of provider, once central to identity, is no longer guaranteed. But perhaps the most painful statistic is not about jobs or diplomas, it's about connection. Surveys show that men today report fewer close friendships than ever before. Many confess to having no one they can truly confide in. Loneliness has become a quiet epidemic. And behind the silence, tragedy. Nearly 80% of suicides are men. Men die by suicide almost 4 times more often than women. These are not just numbers, they are lives, cut short by despair, by the crushing weight of feeling irrelevant, by the absence of a clear path forward. Richard Reeves, in his book of Boys and Men, describes it plainly. Boys and men are struggling. He is not pointing to weakness, but to disorientation. The world has changed education, work, family structures, and too many men are standing on old ground, wondering why it no longer holds. The expectations they were raised with do not match the realities they face, and the result is a fracture in identity. Think about it in your own life. Maybe you've felt the sting of losing a job and realizing how much of your worth was tied to a title. Maybe you've noticed that no matter how hard you work, the respect you long for feels just out of reach. Maybe you've succeeded on paper but still carry an emptiness that success cannot fill. Or maybe you've caught yourself asking, what does being a man really mean anymore? This confusion is not weakness. It is the natural result of living in a time where the cultural script has been rewritten. But no one has handed out a new one. For generations, masculinity was measured by external markers: income, authority, physical dominance. Today, those measures are unstable. Women can and do achieve them too. Economies rise and fall. Industries appear and disappear. And if a man's identity rests only on roles outside his control, his sense of worth will rise and fall with them. Here lies the heart of the crisis. When identity is borrowed from external markers, it collapses when those markers shift. And in a world that changes this quickly, collapse becomes inevitable. But there is another way. 2,000 years ago, the Stoics faced a world of instability just as dramatic as our empires in turmoil, roles in flux, uncertainty at every turn. They too asked, what makes a man truly strong when everything outside is fragile? And their answer was not wealth, not status, not roles. Their answer was virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. These, they said, are the only true measures of character. These cannot be taken by fortune, by politics, by loss. They belong to you, always. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled the Roman Empire, wrote in his private reflections, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." His words cut through centuries to reach us here. Stop chasing shifting definitions. Stop waiting for the world to hand you a role. Live by virtues that endure. Epictetus, born into slavery, had no wealth, no status, no control over his circumstances. Yet he taught his students that true freedom and true dignity lie in mastering one's own mind and actions. "You may fetter my leg," he said, "but not even Zeus himself can fetter my will. If a man in chains could live with unshakable dignity, then surely masculinity cannot be about external power, it must be about inner strength." Seneca, advisor to emperors, warned that men waste their lives chasing applause while neglecting their souls. His reminder was sharp. Time is our only true possession. To waste it on shallow performances of masculinity is to miss the very essence of life. These voices offer us a new map. Masculinity is not a mask you wear, nor a role you perform to please society. It is a set of virtues you embody, qualities that cannot be stripped from you by job loss, rejection, or cultural change. And that is where the crisis of identity becomes an opportunity. If men are willing to step away from outdated scripts and instead anchor themselves in virtue, they can build a masculinity that is unshakable. This is the journey we will take together. In the next part, we will move from theory to practice. We will uncover 5 Stoic questions, each one a tool to help you redefine masculinity in your own life. We will start simple, asking what truly matters, and we will build, step by step, to the most radical question of all, whether you can not only endure life as it comes, but embrace it, even love it. So I'll ask you again, not as a challenge, but as an invitation. Are you ready to stop measuring yourself by old markers? Are you ready to find strength in something deeper? Stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you will have more than answers. You will have a compass. If we accept that masculinity today is in crisis, the next step is to ask, where do we look for guidance? Modern culture throws countless answers at us. Social media parades images of alpha men flaunting cars and money. Self-help books preach dominance or quick tricks to win respect. Some voices say men must return to tradition, others demand men reinvent themselves entirely. And in all the noise, the confusion deepens. But the Stoics, 2,000 years ago, faced a world just as turbulent as ours. Rome was a place of constant change, wars, political upheaval, shifting family rules. One day you could be in favor with the emperor, the next day in exile. If manhood were measured by rules or reputation, it was always fragile. And fragility is exactly what many men feel today. They know their footing is unsteady because their worth depends on things outside their control. The Stoics refused to build identity on shifting ground. Instead, they turned inward, towards something no political revolution or cultural shift could touch. Virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. These 4 virtues became the compass they carried through every storm. Wisdom is clarity, seeing reality as it is, and discerning what is truly within your control. Courage is action, moving forward in spite of fear. Justice is integrity, living not only for yourself, but in service and fairness to others. Temperance is mastery, discipline over desire. Balance in a world that constantly pulls you toward excess. Notice something. None of these virtues depend on your job title, your income, or your reputation. You can lose a position and still live with justice. You can face rejection and still show courage. You can suffer loss and still remain temperate. Virtue belongs to you alone. This is why Marcus Aurelius, the emperor himself, warned against chasing applause. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. For him, being a man wasn't about ruling Rome. It was about ruling himself. Epictetus, who had no wealth and no status, taught the same. Though he began life as a slave, he insisted that dignity could not be taken. "You may chain my leg," he said, "but not even Zeus can chain my will." His masculinity was not measured by power over others, but by mastery over himself. Seneca echoed this when he reminded his students that life is short, and that time is our most precious possession. To waste it chasing shallow approval is to lose what matters most. For him, masculinity was not performance, but presence living with intention, grounded in virtue, every single day. So what does this mean for us now? It means that the question, what is a real man, needs to be reframed. It is not answered by income, physical dominance, or societal rule. It is answered by character. Masculinity, through the Stoic lens, is not something you perform for others. It is something you embody within yourself. And when you live this way, the crisis of identity loses its grip. Because you no longer have to prove yourself according to shifting cultural scripts. You don't collapse when old roles vanish. You don't scramble to fit into new molds. You stand on virtues that never change. Think about how freeing that is. To no longer measure your worth by a paycheck or by whether others see you as successful. To no longer fear that rejection erases your value. To no longer depend on the world's applause to feel strong. This is not weakness. This is strength of the deepest kind, the strength the Stoics carried through wars, exile, loss, and betrayal. And this is the strength we need today. Because the crisis of masculinity is not solved by louder voices or tougher performances. It is solved by building a foundation that cannot be shaken. That's why, in the next part, we turn from philosophy to practice. We'll walk through 5 Stoic questions tools you can carry with you. Questions that can guide your choices, challenge your habits, and rebuild your identity from the inside out. Each one will take us deeper. The first will clear away the noise. The second will free you from wasted struggle. The third will reconnect you to purpose. The fourth will redefine your value. And the fifth, the most radical, will invite you to embrace even fate itself. These are not just questions. They're a map, a way through confusion, a way to reclaim masculinity not as a role, but as a way of being. Every crisis of identity begins with a confusion of priorities. Men today are pulled in 1,000 directions: career goals, family duties, financial pressures, social expectations. And in the rush to meet them all, something strange happens. You can be busy every hour of the day and still feel empty. You can win promotions, buy a bigger house, tick every box on society's checklist, and still lie awake at night with the gnawing thought, none of this feels like it matters. The Stoics were deeply aware of this trap. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." In other words, life is not too short, it just feels that way when we fill it with things that are meaningless. His warning was clear. If you do not stop to ask whether what you pursue is truly important, you will waste the one thing you can never recover. Time. Think about your own life for a moment. How many of your daily actions are chosen because they're meaningful? And how many are just habits, obligations, or attempts to impress others? How often do you stop to ask yourself, is this worth the hours of my life it consumes? Consider the man who works 60 hours a week, not because he loves his work, but because he fears losing status. He buys the car, the house, the clothes not because he values them, but because he wants to appear successful. Outwardly, he looks strong. Inwardly, he feels hollow. That is not strength, it is slavery to appearances. Now contrast him with another man who also works hard, but with clarity. He chooses his work because it aligns with his values. He invests in relationships that truly matter. He spends time on things that build him up and allow him to serve others. He may have less applause from the crowd, But he has something greater peace. The difference between these two men is not circumstance, but clarity. One has asked the question, is what I'm pursuing truly important? The other has not. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. For him, the urgency of mortality was not meant to paralyze, but to focus. If life is fragile, then we cannot afford to waste it chasing shadows. We must direct our energy to what truly matters. So what does matter? For the Stoics, it was virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, everything else wealth. Fame, pleasure was secondary. If you lived in alignment with virtue, your life was meaningful, no matter your external circumstances. And if you ignored virtue, no amount of external success could fill the void. This question, then, is the first step in redefining masculinity today. Because so many men are trapped in pursuits that look impressive but feel hollow. The culture says more money, more power, more status. But the Stoics say, more virtue, more character, more meaning. Which path will you choose? Take this question with you into your week. Is what I'm pursuing truly important? Write down your top 3 priorities. Then compare them to how you actually spend your time. Do they match? If not, why not? What would it take to realign your actions with what truly matters? This is not about rejecting ambition. It is about refining it. It is about ensuring that what you strive for is worthy of the one life you have. Because here is the truth. If you never ask this question, you may wake up one day having climbed the ladder of success, only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. But if you ask it now, and often, you can begin to climb with purpose, with clarity, and with peace. And that brings us to the second question. If the first step is to clarify what matters, the second is to face a truth that changes everything. Not everything is within your control. And if you don't grasp this, frustration will rule your life. Once you've asked what truly matters, the next step is just as critical. Learning to separate what you can control from what you cannot. Because here lies one of the deepest sources of male frustration today: men tying their identity to things they never actually commanded in the first place. Think about how much energy we waste worrying about the opinions of others. How often do men measure themselves against an image they cannot control? The approval of a boss, the respect of peers, the affection of a partner. And when that approval is withheld, they collapse as if their entire worth has been stolen. But here's the truth. It was never theirs to own. Epictetus made this the cornerstone of his teaching. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. What is up to us? Our judgments, our choices, our actions. What is not? Everything else: our reputation, our wealth, even our health to some degree. And when you confuse the two, suffering multiplies. Imagine a man who defines himself entirely by career success. A promotion comes and he feels powerful. A setback comes and he feels worthless. His emotions rise and fall with forces beyond his control. Is that strength, or is it slavery to circumstance? Now, picture another man who grounds his identity in virtue. He works hard, but his dignity doesn't depend on the outcome. If he wins the promotion, good, he uses it well. If he doesn't, he still carries himself with courage and justice. His worth remains intact. That is freedom. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Notice what he's saying. Power is not found in bending the world to your will, it is found in mastering your response to the world. Think about how this applies to modern masculinity. So much of the crisis comes from men trying to live up to standards they cannot control. Be taller, be richer, be admired, but none of these are truly up to us. And when you chase them as if they define your manhood, you set yourself up for endless disappointment. What if, instead, You asked, is this within my control? If the answer is no, let it go. If the answer is yes, act with all the discipline and courage you can muster. That simple distinction can transform your life. Ask yourself honestly, how much of your stress right now comes from trying to control the uncontrollable? How much of your energy is wasted on resentment, comparison, or the desperate need to be seen a certain way? And what would your life look like if you redirected that energy toward what is actually in your hands, your choices, your words, your integrity? This question is not a call to passivity. It is not about shrugging and saying nothing matters. It is about focus. It is about refusing to let external noise dictate your internal compass. It is about reclaiming power where it actually resides. So here is a practice. At the end of each day, write down 3 things that frustrated you. Then ask, for each one, was this within my control? If not, release it. If yes, decide what action you'll take tomorrow. Over time, this habit rewires the mind. It trains you to spend less energy on what you can change and more on what you can. The second Stoic question frees you from invisible chains. It helps you step off the treadmill of frustration. And once you begin to live this way, you'll notice something. Your sense of self is no longer fragile. It no longer collapses when external things shift, because your identity has moved inward, where it cannot be taken. But the journey doesn't stop here. Once you know what matters and what's within your control, the next question takes us deeper. It asks not just about yourself, but about your connection to others. And it reminds us that masculinity without contribution is incomplete. We've clarified what truly matters. We've learned to separate what is in our control from what is not. Now we arrive at the third question, and it pushes us beyond ourselves. Am I contributing to others? Because here is a truth to often forgotten: masculinity is not just about self-mastery. It is also about service. The strongest men in history, from soldiers to statesmen to philosophers, were not defined solely by what they achieved for themselves, but by what they gave to those around them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We were born for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids for him." Manhood was inseparable from contribution. A man who lived only for himself was incomplete, like a hand cut off from the body. True strength was found in connection, in service, in living as part of something larger. Think of the modern crisis of masculinity. So many men report feeling isolated, disconnected, without purpose. And is it any wonder? If you live only for yourself, your paycheck, your reputation, your pleasures, life quickly becomes hollow. But when you contribute, when you give, when you serve, something shifts. Your life gains weight. Your actions echo beyond your own skin. Consider the father who shows up fully for his children, not just providing materially, but guiding, teaching, loving. Consider the mentor who takes time to invest in a younger colleague, shaping a future he may never see. Consider the friend who listens when someone is on the edge, who offers presence instead of empty advice. These contributions may not earn headlines or applause, but they are the essence of real masculinity. And yet, how often do men confuse contribution with control? They think serving means dominating, that leadership means demanding. But the Stoics saw it differently. To serve is not to rule, it is to align your strength with the good of others. To lead is to lift, not to crush. Justice, one of the first Stoic virtues, is not about power over others, but about fairness and integrity in every relationship. So let's ask the hard question in your life right now. Are you contributing, or are you drifting? When was the last time you made someone else's burden lighter? When was the last time you gave without expecting return? When was the last time you asked, not what do I get, but what do I give? Seneca reminds us, no man can live happily who regards himself alone. He must live for his neighbor if he would also live for himself. Notice the paradox. Service is not self-denial. It is self-fulfillment. When you contribute, you expand your identity beyond your own skin. You discover meaning not by hoarding, but by giving. Here's a practical challenge. This week, choose one act of contribution. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Mentor someone at work. Call a friend you know is struggling. Offer help without waiting to be asked. And when you do, pay attention to how you feel afterwards. You'll notice something powerful. Contribution fills the emptiness that chasing status never can. Because masculinity, in the Stoic sense, is not isolation. It is responsibility. It is showing up, not just for yourself, but for the people and the community that rely on you. That is the path to meaning. That is the antidote to loneliness. And once you begin to live this way, the crisis of identity starts to heal. You no longer ask, "Who am I?" in the abstract. You answer it in action. I am someone who contributes. I am someone who serves. I am someone who makes the world, even in small ways, better. But our journey doesn't end here. Because even as you contribute, a deeper question remains. What truly defines your value? If you're not careful, even service can become another performance, another role. And the Stoics challenge us to look beneath even that, to discover the core of our worth. That is the fourth question, and it will change everything. By now, we've asked 3 important questions. What truly matters? What is within my control? Am I contributing to others? Each one clears away a layer of confusion. But now we come to the heart of the crisis, the question that defines not only masculinity, but identity itself. What truly defines my value? This is where so many men get trapped. From childhood, they're taught to tie their worth to external achievements, grades, trophies, salaries, titles. Society applauds the man who earns more, lifts more, controls more. And for a time, that applause feels good. But what happens when the applause stops? What happens when you lose the job? When your body weakens? When someone younger or stronger takes your place? If your worth is built on those shifting sands, collapse is inevitable. The Stoics warned against this illusion. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling the Roman Empire, reminded himself daily that wealth and reputation were fragile. It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them, he wrote. He refused to let his identity rest on the empire's praise. Instead, he measured himself by whether he lived with justice, courage, and wisdom. Epictetus, who had no wealth and no freedom, carried the same conviction. If dignity depended on possessions or status, he would have had none. But he insisted that value comes from virtue, not circumstance. If you want to improve, he said, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, let others misjudge you. Their opinion does not define your worth. Your choices do, and Seneca wrote with equal clarity, a man is as miserable as he thinks he is. If you measure yourself by shallow standards, misery follows. If you measure yourself by character, no external loss can strip you of value. Consider 2 men who both lose their jobs. The first sees himself as worthless, because his entire identity was wrapped in his title. He spirals into despair. The second grieves the loss, yes, but remembers that his worth lies in his honesty, his courage, his ability to contribute. He picks himself up, steadies his mind, and begins again. The circumstances are the same. The difference lies in where they place their value. This is the challenge the Stoics give us, to shift from measuring worth by external markers to measuring worth by internal virtue. In modern terms, this means asking not, how much do I earn? But how do I live? Not how do others see me? But what kind of man am I becoming? So let me ask you, what defines your value right now? Is it your job, your bank account, your reputation, Or is it your integrity, your courage, your wisdom? Be honest. Because until you make that shift, your worth will always be fragile. But once you do, no rejection, no failure, no loss can take it away. Here's a practice. Write down 3 qualities you want people to remember you for, not your skills, not your possessions, but your character. Then each evening, ask yourself, did I live those qualities today? That simple exercise can slowly rewire how you measure yourself. Because the truth is this: masculinity built on roles will crumble when roles change. Masculinity built on virtue endures forever. And that leads us to the final question, the highest and hardest of all. If our value comes from virtue, not circumstance, can we go one step further? Can we embrace even failure, even rejection, even loss, not just as acceptable, but as necessary, even good? That is the 5th question, and it will test everything we've learned so far. The final Stoic question is also the most radical. If this is my fate, can I embrace it? Not just accept it, not just endure it, but embrace it, love it even. The Stoics call this amor fati, the love of fate. It was not about passive resignation. It was about active transformation, turning even the harshest blows of life into fuel for growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." His image is unforgettable. Life will throw logs, even wet ones, onto your fire. But the strong man, the Stoic man, does not let them extinguish the flame. He consumes them, transforms them, and burns brighter because of them. This is the ultimate test of masculinity. Can you not only survive hardship, but turn it into strength? Can you meet failure, rejection, even loss, and say, "This too belongs, this too can serve me"? That is not weakness, it is the deepest strength. Think of the man who loses his job unexpectedly. For many, this would feel like the end. But the Stoic response reframes it. This is my fate. Can I embrace it? Suddenly. The setback is not a sentence, but a redirection. Perhaps it forces him to reinvent himself, to develop courage he never knew he had, to find meaning in a new path, or consider the man rejected in love. His pride is wounded, his heart aches. But if he practices amor fati, he whispers, "This too is part of my story." Rejection clears space for something else, perhaps for growth, perhaps for someone more aligned, perhaps simply to remind him that his worth is not tied to another's approval. The pain remains, but it is no longer empty. It is purposeful. This mindset is desperately needed today. Too many men collapse under the weight of life's blows because they have been taught to see suffering as shameful. But the Stoics remind us that suffering is not shameful, it is inevitable. The only question is, what will you do with it? Will you curse it, resist it, deny it, or will you embrace it, transform it, and let it forge you into someone stronger? Epictetus, who endured slavery and exile, knew suffering intimately, yet he taught, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens. Then you will be happy." His words are not about surrendering dreams. They are about aligning yourself with reality so fully that nothing can break you. Now ask yourself honestly, what in your life right now feels like a burden you wish you could throw away? A responsibility, a hardship, a rejection, a failure. What if, instead of wishing it gone, you chose to embrace it as part of your path? What if you looked at it and said, "This is my training, this is my fuel, this is mine to carry with dignity"? How much stronger, freer, and calmer would you feel? This is the peak of Stoic practice. It is where masculinity becomes unshakable, not because life is easy, but because you no longer need it to be. You stop waiting for perfect circumstances to feel whole. You stop resisting reality. You start loving it. And when a man reaches this point, the crisis of masculinity dissolves. Because no external rule, no shifting expectation, no loss can define him. His identity is rooted in virtue, and his strength is proven in how he turns every blow into fire. But before we end, we need to bring all 5 questions together to see how they form a compass, a way out of confusion, a way into meaning, a way to live with purpose in a world that often feels empty. That's where we turn in the closing reflection. We've walked through 5 questions. Each one has peeled back another layer of confusion, another illusion about what it means to be a man today. And now, at the end of this journey, we can see the whole picture more clearly. The first question, is what I'm pursuing truly important? Forced us to confront the ways we waste our lives on what does not matter. It called us to stop climbing the wrong ladders and to begin directing our energy toward pursuits that align with virtue and meaning. The second question, is this within my control? Freed us from chains we never should have carried. It reminded us that so much of our stress comes from trying to own what was never ours, other people's opinions, the twists of fortune, the shifting roles society assigns. True power, the Stoics said, lies only in mastering our own choices. The third question, am I contributing to others? Turned us outward. It reminded us that strength is incomplete if it lives only for itself. Masculinity without contribution is hollow. True manhood shows up for others, carries responsibility, and makes the world lighter for those around him. The fourth question, what truly defines my value? Cut to the core, it asked us to stop tying our worth to salaries, titles, and applause. It asked us instead to root our identity in virtues no one can take away. Wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. This is the foundation of an unshakable life. And the final question, if this is my fate, can I embrace it? Took us to the summit. It challenged us not only to endure hardship, but to transform it, even to love it, to practice amor fati, the love of fate, to burn brighter because of the logs life throws on our fire. Together, these 5 questions form more than philosophy. They form a compass. In a world where masculinity feels uncertain, these questions give direction. They strip away the noise and offer a foundation that cannot be shaken by cultural shifts, economic changes, or personal losses. And here's the truth. The crisis of masculinity is not going away on its own. The confusion, the loneliness, the despair, they will not be solved by earning more, by shouting louder, or by pretending nothing is wrong. They will only be solved when men begin to live differently, when they start asking better questions and living by better answers. So let me ask you directly, which of these 5 questions struck you most deeply? Which one do you need to carry with you this week? Don't just think about it, practice it. Write it down. Ask it at the start of each day. Let it shape your choices. Because masculinity is not something handed to you by society. It is something you build, question by question, decision by decision, virtue by virtue. And the world needs men who live this way. Men who are wise, courageous, just and disciplined. Men who contribute. Men who can love even fate itself. If this journey resonated with you, don't let it end here. Share this video with someone you care about. Start a conversation. Ask these questions together. And if you want to go deeper, subscribe to StoicCraft, where we continue to explore how timeless Stoic wisdom can guide us through the hardest questions of modern life. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." These 5 questions are the quality checks your life needs. Use them, practice them. Let them guide you through the storm. Because in the end, masculinity is not about living up to shifting expectations. It is about becoming a man who cannot be shaken, no matter what the world takes away. And that kind of man, the Stoic man, will never be in crisis.